Hey, New Life Church, Cory Cangelosi here from Hot Springs. So glad to be sharing with you and really with your families today as we're in the middle of our family series. I want to talk to you about money and specifically how money is like manure. What in the world does that mean? Well, we're going to get to that in just a minute, but I know right now that a lot of you are rolling your eyes thinking, oh, money, why are we talking about money? I thought we were talking about family. You know, can you talk to me about losing weight or something instead of money? I mean, that's just kind of an uncomfortable topic, you know, and I don't want to get into that. It's kind of personal, but the reason why we're talking about money as a church, why we ever do, is because Jesus talked about money a lot. In fact, 1 in 7 verses in the gospel is about money and possession. He talked about money more than he talked about heaven and hell combined. 16 out of 38 of the parables that Jesus told were about money and possessions. So money must be important to God in some way if Jesus is going to talk about it more than he talks about heaven or hell. And the truth is, money has to do with our giving, right? And giving is the verb of the Bible. Okay, the subject of the Bible is God, Jesus. He's the subject. And the object is us. But the verb of the Bible is giving. We all know John 3:16, it says, for God, the subject, so loved who? The world, that's us, we're the object of his love, that he did what? He gave. Right? So it's the heart of God is to give. And so listen to what the Bible says about money and how we handle it. In Luke 16, verse 10, I want to read this. He who's faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. The very little thing, by the way, is talking about our money. It's talking about our worldly wealth, the temporary things that we own in this life. Verse 11, therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you? And if you've not been faithful in the use of that which is another's, right? Because we're stewards, who will give you that which is your own? Talking about an eternal reward, an inheritance. Verse 13, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. And that's okay, because money is like manure, right? We'll get to that in a minute, because here's what I want to share with you. And we're going to go all the way back to Genesis and look at two people who gave something to God. In fact, these are the first offerings ever brought to God in the Bible that we have recorded. It's important to know what happened first, because the first time can teach us a lot about something, right? The first marriage, Adam and Eve, teaches us a lot about family and all those things. But when you talk about money, I think it's important to go back to the very beginning and look at who were the first people to ever give an offering to God. Now, it wasn't necessarily money, because there wasn't a need for currency and money back then, but we're going to look at what they gave and why it's important to talk about money and as a family to know and pray and have convictions about our money. Okay, so let's look at Genesis chapter 4, talk about Cain and Abel, the first two kids in the Bible. They're brothers, and Cain was a tiller of the ground, the Bible says. So he had a farm, he grew wheat and different produce and whatnot. And Abel was a shepherd. He was a keeper of the flocks, the Bible says. So Genesis chapter 4, verse 3, here's the first offering ever brought to God. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Now, I hope you didn't miss that part says in the course of time or at the end of days. Okay, keep that in mind, because basically what that means is that it was like at the end of the season or the end of the week or the end of the growing time. Not exactly sure when it was, except that scholars all agree it wasn't first. Now, listen to verse 4. Abel, on his part, so in contrast, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. So in other words, he brought the firstborn, okay, so the first fruit of his flocks and the best part of the firstborn. So their fat portions, like the backstrap of the animal. I mean, this is the prime cut of meat here. He gave his very best to God with this offering. Now, this is important because it's in contrast to Cain, who just gave in the course of time. He just gave basically when it was convenient, when he had the leftovers. And notice in verse 4 what he says about this. The Bible says, and the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering. But for Cain and for his offering, he had no regard. So God received Abel's offering of the firstlings of his flock, the best part of meat. But but Cain, he didn't have regard. He didn't receive it. And here's what I want you to see right here: is the difference between these two offerings is that one person gave out of preference, the other person gave out of conviction. Okay, see, Cain gave when it was convenient, out of preference. Abel, on his part, he gave out of conviction. See, he was convicted. He had a strong belief that God deserved his very best. See, he was faithful with what he'd been given in these flocks and in his life there, what he was a steward over, of the worldly wealth that he had. And so that's what, in regards to giving, I want to encourage you as a family, as you think about this, to be somebody who gives based out of conviction and not preference. See, the world says give and do whatever you do it when it works for you, right? Do what's best for you. Do it when it's convenient, whether that's going to church or serving or giving or whatever it is. I mean, even if it's like having a hobby or buying a new house, I mean, find the one that fits you the best or whatever it is. It's all about you. But conviction is different. Conviction is when we do it even if it's not convenient. We do something out of the belief that this is what God calls me to. And it's in order to be found trustworthy, like Luke 16 says, with everything that God's given us. See, going back to Luke 16, he's saying, look, if you haven't been faithful with worldly wealth, how are you going to be entrusted with what's eternal? And our hope for you as a church is that God would entrust our church with eternal things. He would entrust our church with what's forever, with souls, with purpose, with restored marriages and healthy families and the things that you can't buy with money. But he says, look, it all depends on how you handle money. And so let's talk about manure, because obviously money is like manure. Well, here's the thing about manure. If you get a bunch of manure and you pile it up, it's going to start to stink after a while, actually pretty quick. But if you take manure, that same substance, and you spread it out and you put it in a lot of different places, what does manure cause things to do? It causes things to grow. It doesn't stink anymore. It actually becomes a fertilizer that helps other things to grow. And I believe if you can treat money like manure, and instead of piling it up and spending it on preference and just what we want and just on ourselves, like piling it around all of my desires and what I prefer and what I want, kind of like Cain did, like I'll give God some leftovers. But if we can be people of conviction and take what God's given us and give him of the first fruits of it and live out of a trust and a faith in God that says, God, look, I'm going to give to you and I'm going to spread these things out that you've entrusted, this worldly wealth, this worldly money that's only temporary, then I believe God will start entrusting us with really what's truly valuable, true riches, which are the things of his kingdom. It's souls, it's life, it's joy, it's peace. It's all the things that he wants to bless us with that are forever. And so New Life Church, I hope this is encouraging to you today. I hope that you will see money is like manure. God bless you guys.